Okay, so let's move on and talk about maternal mortality because I have seen a lot of freakouts in the recent days about what the maternal mortality rate is in our country and specifically in Mississippi because Mississippi is where this all started, right? Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization came out of Mississippi. And so a lot of people have been pointing to the fact that Mississippi has the worst maternal mortality rate in the country. And as a matter of fact, it's one of the highest in the world. And that kind of language sounds really scary, right? Like I've seen a lot of people get freaked out over this idea that, oh my goodness, Mississippi is one of the worst places in the world for a woman to give birth. She has the highest likelihood of dying. And so I want to take a moment and actually dive into that statistic because it has to be like a really large number, right? In order to justify the crazy freakout that we've been having. Well, spoiler alert, it's not. I want to be very clear. I do not want any women to die in childbirth. I think that we should 100% be taking non-violent steps to improve the odds of mothers not dying in childbirth. Like we should do everything we can to improve the maternal mortality rate, have fewer people who are dying in childbirth, 100%. But we also need to be realistic about what the actual risk today is of dying in childbirth. So the national maternal mortality rate is 0.017%. The Mississippi maternal mortality rate is 0.0221%. That is a 0.005% difference. Let me say that again. That is a 0.005% difference. That is not worth the absolute craziness that I've been seeing on the internet. Now, some places are worse than that in the world. So the worst place to give birth in the world is Ghana. And in Ghana, the maternal mortality rate is 0.31%. Larger, still small, but larger. In the US, some people will also talk about this idea of there being severe complications for pregnancy that aren't just death. So we got to talk about that statistic too. So in the US, there is a 1.3% chance of having severe non-fatal pregnancy-related complications. So still a small chance, but a bigger chance than dying. To put this in comparison to things that are not related to pregnancy, your lifetime odds of dying from a pedestrian accident. In other words, if I'm walking down the street, the odds of me being hit by a car and killed is 0.18%. That is a little more than 10 times more likely for me to be killed by being hit by a car as a pedestrian than for me to be killed in pregnancy. The risk of death from getting your appendix removed is even bigger than that. It's 0.21% for patients that are under 60 years old. Okay, we need to be realistic about what the numbers are we're actually talking about here. We should try to make pregnancy and childbirth safer. But if it's 10 times more likely for me to be killed as a pedestrian by a car, and that is very rare, than it is for me to die in childbirth, this isn't quite worth the freak out that we are having. Because percentages do matter. If we're talking about self-defense, which is really where the whole maternal mortality talking point is going, it's the idea that if this is so dangerous, this act of pregnancy, this act of giving birth is so dangerous, then you should have the right to an abortion basically as self-defense against that. And so if we're going to claim something as self-defense, we need to know what the actual risk to your life is, because risks do matter. And at ERI, we came up with a thought experiment very recently. This is another piece of brand new, innovative ERI material that we've been using to help kind of explain that. And I'm going to toss that to Josh to kind of talk through that thought experiment for us.
Yeah, so in this case, we thought to try to help people think about self-defense and what is reasonable and not reasonable risks to start thinking about lethal self-defense. We decided to use a very well-known thing, albeit fairly controversial, which is COVID. So I'm just going to role play if I was talking to a pro-choice person who brought up the self-defense thing and the maternal mortality. I'd start obviously with the common ground, right? I obviously agree that any pregnancy can pose some level of risk to the pregnant individual. However, I don't think it's true or practical to say that a person can claim self-defense for any level of risk they thought they were in. For example, let's say it's 2020 again, our favorite year of recent time. And I got stuck in a small spaceship with someone who moments after we launched into space discovered he had an asymptomatic case of COVID-19. There's no way to turn around the spaceship, and there is zero way to isolate us from each other because the capsule is so small. COVID-19 symptoms, side effects, the length of those symptoms, and the odds of mortality can vary widely, and I can rightly think that my life may be in danger, even though my traveling companion is completely fine. However, it seems fairly obvious that I can't simply throw him out of the spaceship. That would be killing him. We should do absolutely everything possible to protect me from the potential dangers of COVID 19, except kill someone. However, in the US, at the height of 2020, you had about a 1% chance of dying if you contracted COVID 19. And this statistic is understandably imprecise given the difficulty of tracking COVID 19 cases. It's complicated to determine what exactly constitutes a legitimate risk to your life, but it seems obvious that you can't kill an asymptomatic person with COVID 19, even if they technically have a 2% risk to your life. I do think that people should be able to judge what kinds of risks they are willing to take. But if I killed someone with COVID 19 out of a perceived risk to my life, that seems pretty unreasonable. It seems even less reasonable when the risk is less than 1%, like the risk of dying from a pregnancy related complication in the United States, again, which is 0.017%. If I can kill someone who has a 0.017% chance of causing my death, then I could kill just about anyone and claim self defense. So we suspect that thought experiment is going to be helpful to a lot of people, and we're definitely going to be interested in hearing from people who use it and hearing what their results are.